In today's Lightroom video, I'm going to take you into the program and I'm going to show you one of the best shortcut keys that you can use throughout the entire program. So stick around. So inside of Lightroom, the Alt Option key is a key that you're going to use all of the time. But if you don't know what the shortcuts are and what you can use this key for, you would never find this on your note. These are things you just never stumble upon. So in this video, I'm going to actually show you a bunch of different ways that you can use the Alt key. So we're going to jump into the computer here and I'm going to show you, some of the things that you can do with it. So the first thing I'm going to start with is solo mode. Now solo mode, when you open up your panels here, you have all these different panels here, and right now I have my computer in solo mode. If I hold down the Alt key and click on another one, it's going to open. Now I have these two panels open. So the other way to use solo mode is to right click on the panel and click solo mode, and it puts it in solo mode. But if you just use the Alt key, it'll open them and then close them. So now that's the only one that's open. If I want transform open, I can hold it down. Now transform and HSL is open. Hold down the Alt key and I'm back in solo mode again. So that's one of the quick shortcuts you can use to keep your basic panel tidy without having all the different panels open. The second thing that you can do with the Alt key is you can zero out your settings. So if you look on this picture, I'm going to right click this image that's already been edited and I'm going to create a virtual copy. Now I have a second copy of this to work on. Okay, so if I wanted to zero out all of these settings here on the right hand side, I could double click on each individual slider and it'll zero it out. Or, depending on what the adjustments are, if I hold down the Alt key and I click on the top, each one of these panels has a little heading. When you hold down the Alt key, you can reset them all. And that's for any of the settings in here. So even if you're using, let's say you're using one of the adjustment brushes, when I hold down the Alt key, see how this changes to reset? The effect button changes to reset when I hold down the Alt key. And then if I click on it, it resets everything. Another way you can use the Alt key is inside the adjustment brush. So I'm going to apply very heavily. I'm just going to actually apply an adjustment where I take the exposure down. And I know this looks ridiculous, but I want to make a point. So if I hold the Alt key down, it turns my adjustment brush into an eraser. And now I can erase that adjustment wherever I want. So I can quickly go from applying and erasing. So I can make my adjustment small. If I wanted to, I can apply it right into a spot here, and then if I wanted to, I can erase it. Okay, so that's another quick way that you can use the Alt key. Otherwise, what I'd have to do is to go down here and actually click erase and go back and forth inside of the tool. But with the brush, I can quickly jump back and forth. So that's another quick way to, a lot of times when you're messing around with a photo, you might want to change something quickly, or you get so far away from where you want to be, you just want to reset the whole thing. So rather than setting all the parameters, you can use the Alt key to just back out of the different settings that you want to do. Maybe you want to remove all your adjustments, easy to do. So the Alt key can let you quickly reset all of your sliders. Cropping, that's one of the ways that you can also use the Alt key. If I go into the crop overlay tool, which is right here, now you can see this image was already cropped. Okay, now if I grab this pin on the corner here and pull it down, it'll only pull it from that top left corner. Okay, same thing with this one. If I do it here, it's going to do the same thing. Okay, it'll pull it from the corner you're pulling. If I hold the Alt key down, the entire image will crop straight to the middle. So let's say I wanted to get this little part in the middle here, or anything I want to do, it's going to keep the middle of the image the same. Doesn't matter where you pull the crop from, as opposed to pulling from the side and just moving the pin on that side. So that's another quick way you can use the Alt key, especially when you're cropping. Eric and I, we crop just about every image, and you know, a lot of times there's an image inside an image. So this is a great way to mess around with the crop tool and move it, and you can have a little more control with it. If you've seen my details video, you've seen me do this before. Now, when I go in to sharpen this image right here, if I want to pull this slider all the way across, if I hold the Alt key down, it's actually going to turn the image black and white. Kind of gives you a little bit of a better view for the sharpening. Okay, now the masking tool down on the bottom here is where the Alt key really shines. This is where you can really see where all of your sharpening is going to be applied. So when I hold this down with the Alt key and I slide across, the further I slide it, it's showing me the mask overlay of where the sharpening is going to be applied. Okay, so now that's where my sharpening is going to be applied. And in the radius and the details, it'll actually gray the image out. So you can see the edges of the image a little bit tighter. And if I pull it to the right, I don't know if you can see that here, but if I pull it to the right, it gives you a little bit more detailed view of where the sharpening is being applied for both of these, for radius and detail. Okay, so that's a great way to control the sharpening in your image, because if you don't do that, it's going to apply sharpening over everything, and the entire image is going to look pixelated or grainy when you zoom in on it. You only want the sharpening around the edges, and you don't want to go too far with it. Now, along the lines of what I just showed you with the masking in the details panel, you can do the same thing in the basic panel. So we're going to go into the basic panel here, and if I hold the Alt key down and click on each one of these sliders, it's going to show me where I'm overexposed or underexposed. It'll do the same thing with the highlight slider. As I pull this up, it's going to show me the parts that are overexposed, and I can pull it down until I get to a point where I'm happy. Same thing with the shadows. I could pull this down, and it's going to show me the really dark parts of the image. And when I pull it this way to the right, it's going to show me, it's going to open up those shadows. Whites does the same thing. Okay, all of those parts that you can see in that image are now overexposed. When I show you the image, those parts are completely blown out. So I don't want that. I want to pull it back this way. And the black slider will do the opposite. This will show you the parts of the image that are completely black. So if I go this way, you'll see these parts of the image are completely black. And you can see it here when I take my finger off the Alt key. So one of the things that most people do when they edit a picture, even on Instagram or wherever you're doing it, people like to put a little vignette around the end. But sometimes it's hard to actually see where you're applying that vignette. So in Lightroom, when you're in the effects panel and you go to post-crop vignetting, and now if you see I'm pulling this, there's just a little bit of a vignette there. You could barely see it. But if I hold down the Alt key and click on this, it'll show me the midpoint. So this will show me how this vignette is being overlaid on this. Even though it's only a slight one, it's going to show me how to do it. Hold the Alt key on roundness, and it'll show me the roundness of it and the feather. So these are ways to really see how your vignette is being applied without having to apply a super heavy-duty vignette to the image. Because in order to really see a vignette, you got to crank it up, and sometimes you don't want that look. You want to add it without it being really noticeable, and these tools underneath the amount you put on will really let you make those adjustments without having to put a heavy vignette on your image. Another spot where you can use the Alt key is in the tone curve panel. I don't use this panel too much, but when you're in there starting to work with it, you're going to see that it's very easy to over apply adjustments. So if I come in here and just grab this pin and I start moving it around, you could see it moves quickly, and it's hard to make fine adjustments, and you can see the image jumping around in the way it looks pretty quickly. Now if I hold down the Alt key, it gives me a more linear, controllable adjustment, and I can pull it down. So this is a better way to use the tone curve panel, I feel. It just gives you a little more control, and it lets you make finer adjustments to your image so you don't overdo it or don't get frustrated trying to use it. The next one is to sync your settings. Now if you look at the bottom of the film strip here, you can see this is the image I'm working on. This was the copy I made, and here's another one from the same set. So I'm going to highlight these other two. What I want to do is copy the settings from the first image to the other two. Now, over here on the bottom, next to the reset button, it says sync. Now, I can do that, and when I click on it, a window pops up, and it'll apply all of these adjustments that I have on the first image to the rest of them. What if I don't want to do this? Or what if I know everything is the way I want, I just want to quickly do it? So instead of having this window pop up every time, if I hold down the Alt key and press sync, it just applies those settings. So now when I open up the next image, all those settings were applied to it. And it just, it's like copying and pasting the same settings on top of the other. But with the Alt key, you're just taking out the step where that panel pops up and you can make adjustments to it. Okay, so those are some quick ways that you can use the Alt key on your keyboard when you're working inside of Lightroom. There are other little shortcuts in here, and hopefully, as the weeks go on and we do some more of these videos, I can give you some other hints and little tricks and tips to make things work faster for you. It's a very complex program. It's easy to use, but there's a lot of hidden stuff in there that'll make your life easier. So if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel, please, if you like the content we're putting out. And ring the little notification bell so every time we put a video up, you get notified. Okay, see you in the next one.